Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. When he was sworn in earlier this year, Manchester Mayor Jay Ruais started a timer, a countdown until the end of his 2-year term. He quite literally wanted to put himself on the clock to get things done. As he approaches the halfway point of his countdown, Mayor Ruais is our guest this morning on CloseUp. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Adam. It's great to be with you. About 400 days left now, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say, it's ticking. You've got that thing going still.
It is indeed.
This last election cycle, Mr. Mayor, was intense. There was a big focus on your city, and it wasn't always necessarily positive what we saw on the airwaves, but in the end, the voters made a clear choice. What are your thoughts on the role that Manchester played, particularly in the race for governor?
Sure. So, I would say in my conversations with Governor-elect Ayotte, she was always really clear. The city of Manchester is a very special place, and similar to what I've been talking about the last 2 years between campaigning and governing, is that we have an incredible city filled with promise and potential. I think the focus that the governor had was on the record and not the city. So, I think a lot of what she raised are things that we've been also working on over the course of this year. We've implemented 14 different strategies to address homelessness. So one of which is making sure that we're focusing on enforcing our laws and enforcing our ordinances. So we were one of the first cities in the nation to ban camping following that Supreme Court ordinance. We eliminated a program in the city and transferred $500,000 to the police department to do increased patrols around our parks and on our city streets. Over 130 arrests have been conducted. Over 450 citations have been handed out. So we're seeing a cleaning up of our streets. But also, we want to make sure that we're addressing the underlying conditions that are creating homelessness. So we continue to fund the Engagement Center. Out of the Engagement Center, just in the last 3 months, we've seen 33 people get housed. Over 750 connections have been made to providers. We're getting people into rehab and detox. And then on the housing side, we've undertaken, for the first time in 23 years, a zoning rewrite to bring more housing into the city. Through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we raised over $1 million into with the sale of 15 properties around the city of Manchester, we were able to make a $200,000 expenditure out of that to create more affordable housing. On the cleanliness aspect of the city, we brought on Street Plus, a downtown cleaning crew. In the 3 months that they've been in operation since August, they've picked up nearly 40,000 pounds of trash, removed over 100 pieces of graffiti, picked up hundreds of needles. We worked with Department of Public Works to pick up over 300,000 pounds of trash citywide through a new initiative where we made dollars available to them. They're doing Saturday pickups. So I think a lot of what the governor's race focused on with respect to Manchester, we've been working incredibly diligently on over the course of this year.
What do you think Governor-elect Ayotte did well, in particular in a city that usually votes blue in gubernatorial elections? Why was she able to carry the Queen City?
I think if you look at what she did on the ground, her and I went door knocking. She was having meetings with downtown business owners. She was talking to people. That's what Governor Sununu always talks about, right? And I think she followed very well in that model. And that's who she is as a person. That wasn't a campaign trick. It's who she is. She talked about the issues that mattered to the city of Manchester. She provided solutions to that. And I think she was rewarded in that effort.
Democrats have been left scratching their heads, in particular, losing Manchester and losing the Senate Democratic leader's seat, which covers sort of the south end of Manchester and also Litchfield. You told us when you were on the campaign trail in 2023, hitting just about every door you possibly could in Manchester, you were hearing a lot about that 2018 bail law. A lot of voters asking, why the heck is it that when someone gets arrested, say for coming and breaking into cars on my street, I see them back out doing the same thing the next day? You've had a big focus on that, but do you think that was a driver in the trend that we're seeing, that a lot of voters are saying, who's going to address these problems? And really lately it's been the Republicans.
Sure, and I do, and I think Governor-elect Ayotte was really responsive to those concerns. It's something that she certainly ran on. I heard her talk about it all the time with respect to public safety, both on reforming the state's bail laws, making sure that we are keeping violent and repeat criminals off of our streets. That's certainly something that I am very much looking forward to working with her on. I was honored when she asked me to participate in her public safety task force, so I think that's going to be a real heavy topic going forward. But at a fundamental level, government has a responsibility to keep its citizens safe. So when Governor-elect Ayotte talks about reforming the bail law, when she talks about providing for retirement benefits for first responders, these are the kinds of things that matter to us here in the city from a public safety standpoint, and also for our officers on the ground and recruiting and retention or retaining of our officers.
your data that you gathered about the rearrest of people under the current bail law really helped drive some change in making some changes around the margins of the bail law aren't necessarily in effect yet. You still think there is more work to do on this, though?
100%. When that law was passed, I praised Concord for being able to come together. Governor Sununu, Republicans, Democrats in the legislature. I think that was an important first step. When I talked to our police on the ground, when I talked to the Police Association in Concord, they say, and I agree with them, that we have to go further, that there are still individuals who are committing a crime in the morning and in the afternoon they're being released. So I recognize that, that's the effective date of that. Some of the portions of the law are not until July of next year or January of next year, depending on which section of it is. But I think there's a real compelling evidence that creates a really difficult task for our officers when they have to continue to rearrest the same people over and over again. And it's those quality of life offenses that we get into that is most hurtful towards our community.
Right, and you've been talking about that. You mentioned the data from the camping ordinance. What do you say to those critics who are saying, well, you're just moving these people around rather than doing anything different for them in terms of intervening in their problems?
Sure. So I've always said that if you want and you need help here in the city of Manchester, it exists. We have not removed any level or lever that they could use to get into treatment, whether it be addiction, whether it be mental health. When we launched the resource fair at the Engagement Center, we brought in the Department of Employment Services to help get people jobs. We worked with the MTA in this city to get people bus passes if they need to get to appointments or get to their jobs. We have not in any way stopped an individual from getting help. But there's a responsibility as well as a city to make sure that our parks are clean, to make sure that our streets are safe, to make sure that we are welcoming for our residents, for businesses, for visitors that are coming into the city. So that's the balance, the comprehensive approach that I've long talked about that we needed to implement. We can't tolerate people ignoring our laws or ignoring our ordinances.
Right. How do you change the perception issue, though? Obviously, certainly on top of all of the advertising that, again, didn't necessarily paint Manchester in a positive light, you have your data, but when people are, still thinking, oh, can I go downtown? What do you tell them?
I come. And it's very clear and it's very evident. I mean, what the city looks like, the changes that we've made, the cleaning that we've done, it's really evident when people come into the downtown. I hear it from our business owners. I hear it from our visitors. I've done 11 town halls since the beginning of the year. When we went on our zoning rewrite town hall around the city, we did 12. So I've done over 23 town halls, and I'm in the community all the time, and people constantly tell me that they're thrilled with the progress that we've made. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that we need to do more, and that more is on the way, and that's certainly what we're looking to do in year 2. But any suggestion that we've not made progress, I think, is inaccurate.
On affordable housing, do you want to see the state go further? Manchester carries a heavy load, and you guys are adding units all the time. Does the state need to do something to spread that housing load more around other communities in the state?
Yeah, I mean, I think Governor-elect Ayotte talked about this very frequently, that the things that they can do at the state level on the permitting side to reduce the costs associated with building projects. I think, certainly, if the numbers I hear are different depending on the time frame. If we need 60,000 new units by 2030 or 2040, Manchester can help with that. Our zoning rewrite, the whole emphasis is to bring greater density into, the parts of the city where it makes more sense, and certainly we're going to play a role in that. But just from a mathematical standpoint, we only have a finite amount of geography in the city, so we can't do it all.
It's a state budget year up there in Concord. Sometimes Manchester can get the short end of the stick, especially when lawmakers are talking about potentially making cuts. We don't know how that'll go yet, but what are you going to be advocating for up there in Concord in that budget process? Yeah,
so I do monthly meetings with our department heads, and one of the things that we consistently talk about is what do we need from Concord? What are we looking for? What things do we have to have conversations about? So I'll work with them through the budget process here in the city and through the state. I think we've built an incredibly collaborative relationship with Concord, with the Sununu administration. That will certainly continue under Governor-elect Ayotte, so we'll have no problem making sure that we're advocating on behalf of the city.
The last of the rescue plan money is being allocated. You've got some big projects there. Do people have to worry a little bit, though, that you're going to face some belt tightening of your own here in Manchester now that federal money is essentially going away?
Yeah, budget process every year is going to be different. I've already started some internal conversations with our department heads on this. Last week we reallocated the the last, or reallocated in some instances, obligated in others, the last of the $1.7 million that we had in the city. We put it towards addressing homelessness. We gave $100,000 to the police department to recruit new officers, certified officers. We worked to get money to our welfare department and a few other entities. So, but I do think this is one of the things I talked about last year, that, you know, there's that cliff in 2026 when all that money is gone, and we have to start preparing in the out years so that that is not as big a cliff going into the future. So that is certainly something that's in our planning stages as we're starting. I mean, budget season, we get these 2-year terms, Adam. Budget season is always feels like it's right around the corner. So
always have to be thinking about the future. To that end, you're the mayor. You also serve in the National Guard. The incoming Trump administration has said number one priority is a mass deportation effort of illegal immigrants, and they want to use potentially military assets to do that. What is your level of comfort with the U.S. military being deployed potentially in a city like Manchester to carry out those deportations?
Yeah, so I mean, a few things on this. One, the city of Manchester is not and will not be a sanctuary city. We are going to cooperate with our federal partners in this, as we've always done. We're also a welcoming and open city for people who are immigrant or refugees, and we have great relationships with those communities here in the city of Manchester. What I've heard from the administration thus far and from the nominee Homan for Borders is that they're going to focus on individuals who are terrorists, on the terrorist watch list, individuals who have committed felonies, crimes while here in the United States. I think that's an appropriate approach. I think it's overdue. It's certainly something that I hear about here in the city and in the state. I'm not going to prejudge any other potential plans that may be coming down the line. What I've heard thus far is a focus on the terrorist watch list and those who have committed crimes who are here, and I think that's appropriate, and the city of Manchester will work with our federal counterparts.
Are you comfortable, though, with a military deployment in the city?
No, I mean, I don't think that that's what the use of the National Guard is, but I've not heard that that's the approach that's going to be taken. I'm not going to prejudge the efforts that may come down the line.
We're a long way off from any talk of re-election season, but is it safe to say you like the job that you're in and you'd like to continue?
I really do think that I have the best job. I mean, it's a big job, and I've enjoyed every aspect of it so far. I think good policies make for good politics, so that the focus that I have right now is on governing, and politics tends to take care of itself if you're continuing to do the right thing and bringing people together on behalf of the city.
All right, Mayor Jay Ruais of Manchester, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you as always, Adam. I appreciate it.
And have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll be right back with Representative Jonah Wheeler, one of the young leaders on the rise at the State House. Stay with us.